Hello, and welcome to another episode of Tabletalk, R&D for greater RP. Today, the subject is player agency. Your players are going to make choices. You know it, I know it, right? Everybody knows it. But how do you make those choices matter more? How do you give them extra weight? Let's talk about it.
Okay, I'll start. I wanted to talk about player agency and how to make player choices more impactful. And so I guess, the way I wanted to start that was to really talk about what player agency is, and I think there's some fine lines to draw around player agency. Like I told you before, I have a completely different take on DMing than a lot of people, I think. So some of this will probably seem maybe weird to some of the people listening, but this is what has worked for me and just some advice that I think could help people make some better games. And one of the things with like player agency, just to establish it and what I'm talking about, is like what limitations there are to that, which seems antithetical, but it's important. And that's that, like, player agency to me is not really letting the players. It's not about letting the players run amok and not role play and do whatever they want in the world, just cause mass chaos. While that's certainly a lot of things that the players have an option to do, and if people enjoy that, by all means, I'm not telling them not to. Mm-hmm. Do whatever it is you enjoy. Typically, that's not really role playing when that happens. Typically, when you're making your characters, you're making heroes, you're making characters that are supposed to go on whatever adventure that the DM is wanting to put together. And so the idea is that you're supposed to role-play characters who do that in a role-playing game. If you're not running with a heavy story focus, my advice probably isn't going to fit very well. But if you're not running with a heavy story focus, making player choices more impactful is probably just going to be giving them more gold or giving them better items or something, and because, giving them better story isn't really going to impact their play if no one's really there.
Right, because it's not the pillar you built your game on anyway. Right.
Right, yeah. So I think that's the first step to me in making player choices more impactful. The first thing that a GM will want to do is to establish a consistent and canonized world. A consistent world is vital to this. And I'll demonstrate why with a couple of examples. But if the world isn't consistent and it doesn't seem to matter to the GM, then it's not going to matter to the players. If the GM doesn't treat the things in the world as if they're important, they're just things that were generated by dice rolls and random, number generators, then typically the players are going to feel that effect, right? It's like if I ask a GM, like, okay, what's this person's name, like, in the middle of a game, and then I see him generate the name, off the top of his head, or he comes up with a goofy name, I know this NPC is not important. Like, that just suddenly clues me in that, okay, well, I know that guy's not important. And even though I might role play as if they are who they are, I, as the player, know, and I have a feeling now that person's not important, and that influences my enjoyment of the game.
This is definitely something we should talk about another time, but I am totally interested to drill into that with you. Because I don't agree, but it's also not the thing we agreed to talk about today. So I'd love to talk about that another day.
Right. So I won't go too in-depth in that, but that consistency is part of, like, what's going to make players care about a world, and that is going to impact, how impactful you can make their decisions, right? Mm-hmm. If they don't care, then, what you decide happens off of their choices is really going to...
I didn't mean to say that I disagree that the DM should or should not care about his world. I just meant that the inclusion of a silly NPC name doesn't necessarily, to me as a player, dictate that NPC is a throwaway character or anything. But I totally agree with you that...
Depending on the game, that of course.
But I totally agree with you that if the DM, even if the DM is flying by his pants, if you can tell, then it lets... most players only care as much or less than the DM does.
I agree with that. Yeah, very much true. Yeah.
So player agency, how do you?
That's always So the other step in creating that impact is to have the players create character backgrounds that they care about and that are in depth. So usually, the more details or work that the players are putting into character backgrounds, the more they care about their characters. Right?
Agreed. I bet you and Kevin Symbiota would have a great conversation about that. Do you not? Do you know what that is?
No.
He makes the Palladium tabletop games, and character creation in any Palladium title can take like an entire afternoon. And Kevin is of the belief that is so in all of his games, because he's of the belief that character origins intrinsically tie how long it takes to make a character, tie value into that character in a proportionate way.
Right.
So if you have to spend an afternoon making that guy, you'll love that guy by the time you're done making him, or you wouldn't have finished in the first place.
Yes, so that's perfect, because then now that the player cares about it, what happens to that character now is incredibly important to the player now, right? So we've created that atmosphere for the player, and so now we start playing the game, and the player starts making choices, and the player, is going to start making choices that they think is really important, right? And so then when the GM starts to wants to satisfy the conditions of this, sometimes these things aren't very they lack the depth that the player had imagined in their head. And so what I think helps this is for the players, and one thing I've employed in my games is to have the players make a list. If the players make a list of things that they want to do, it allows the players to tell the DM, and they can simply talk to the DM outside of the game, but a list is really a really good reason, a way to do this.
Now, when you say list, you mean one that's written down?
Yeah, you can post it on Facebook or send it in a text message or something, but the players can have this list of tasks that they want to accomplish.
That's
right?
a great idea. I can't believe I never thought of that.
Yeah, and so what's so great about that, this is two-pronged. For the GM, it's awesome because I know exactly what they want to do, so I can just plan according to that. I have the outline of the next session I'm going to play, and I know what they want to do next. This is great, and then the best part for the players is that the GM can put incredible details and act like, okay, you decided you were going to go and do this, and this affects this, in these kind of ways. Like, this other NPC that, maybe you didn't even think would be here, he's there, and this makes sense, and it's consistent, and it affected the world, and it changed the way the story turned out. So,
that's
for example,
really cool.
One of my players' short story is like, I had a world where there were no drow or anything. It wasn't something I had established to anybody, but, he was playing an elf, and through reasons, he ended up befriending this priest of this, evil god or whatever. I was like 10 when I made this, forgive me. But I knew what he was intending to do beforehand, and so he goes to the priest's temple. They undergo some kind of ritual or whatever, and he goes unconscious, and when he comes back out, his skin is pale. He can't see very well in the light, but he can see great in the dark, and his hair is like, washed out and gray, and he becomes basically the first dark elf of the world. And when we consistently play in this world over and over again in future campaigns, and there are other dark elves and they've multiplied, we know where that legacy came from. It came from that player. And I was able to put that together because I knew ahead of time, this is what this player wanted to do. He wanted to go befriend this priest, and I can add these extra great elements that make it important to the story. And then that priest that he befriended was supposed to be the bad guy, but the way he befriended him made total sense.
That's really cool. I want to take a second and appreciate your passion. I've interviewed a couple people already, and you're the first person to boom into the phone with your passion, and I love that. Thanks so much.
Oh yeah, I think a lot about the I don't know if I want to call it philosophy, but I think about how can I make this game still what this game is intended to be, but also what I've always thought it was, because my heritage of this is from Dragonlance books, and I was
oh nice.
When I was a kid, I would read Dragonlance, and like they were going on these cool adventures and telling these great stories. And whenever I got to play, it wasn't anything like that. And I was like, well, how do you make it like that? How would that even be possible? And so I spent years just trying to figure out a way to do that and also make it fun.
That's really awesome. I love your list idea. Can I take it? It's a great idea.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
I hope everybody does that. You know, that the list idea really spawned out of like me playing in games and making choices, and then I could tell that the GM just wasn't about to have it. You know, he just wasn't going to have it. I could see if the choices were just completely like, or I don't know if it was choices or my ambitions weren't going to happen. You know,
right?
I want to go and be the, like, I loved Raceland, so it was like, I want to be the best mage in the world or something. Again, I was young, but like, you know, the GM's like, well, that's not going to happen. And it's like, well, why? There could
why
be a
not?
whole story
Right.
about it. Like, why not? Yeah, that could be cool. But okay, I mean, it's up to him, I guess, in the end. But
so if you're talking about making player agency almost intrinsic to the story that you're going to end up telling,
yes.
how do you, on a smaller scale, do you have any methodology or philosophical viewpoints for something on a smaller scale, like go left or right at the crossroads because of plot elements here and here? I don't really have an example right now. Here's one.
Okay.
If you're got your heroes, right, go to, say, save a princess, really cheeky, average, run-of-the-mill, baby's first RPG, right? If you go to save the princess, is there an option? How do you handle if one of the players is like, you know what? Maybe I don't save the princess. Screw that guy.
So that is a little more complex and a little more controversial, because is that character role-playing? Or is that the role of that character, right?
Let's say on your party you have a paladin who is absolutely going to save the princess, right? And you have, because he's been promised a large sack of gold, a lawful evil, I don't really do into traditional alignment, a lawful evil rogue. You can have a guy who just, he's like, you know what, I'll do the thing where I risk my life and save your stupid daughter. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to get, like, major money for my trouble. And afterwards, if he was, say he was chaotic evil and he encounters on the way there a bigger, badder, scarier guy who's like, hey, I'll give you more money if you deliberately sabotage the paladin's plan to save the princess. If the princess does not get saved by such and such a day, I will give you more money than the king was going to give you. How would you handle something like that?
How would you handle something like that? Well, okay, a couple things there. So if that were to happen, I, as the GM, I introduced that element into the game.
Oh, definitely.
Dissension like that. So if I did that, hopefully I have some type of plan, regardless of which way it goes. That is, that's some of the D&D that I love, is when there's conflicts of interest amongst the group.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that the DM should handle too much of that. That I leave to the players to put in a way that they would enjoy it. I would hope that the rogue would prevent the princess from being saved, but do so in a subtle manner. So maybe what I would do is, wherever the princess is going to be, there'd be some opportunities for the rogue to message me. I usually let the players message me so they can do things in secret. And if he wants to do something in secret or whatever that's going to sabotage the paladin's quest to go and get the princess, he could do so, and that could still allow the group to stay together and for him to get his payday.
So you're suggesting the rogue find a way to get paid the larger sum of money, but without the paladin knowing it was him.
Yeah, that's
Sneaky.
one way that could go down. I would provide the tools for that to at least be a scenario, since the group doesn't dissolve.
When you say message you mean like a private message on your phone or something?
Yeah.
That's really smart. I never thought of that.
Private messages on the phone, yeah. A lot of the players will have an electronic device that they'll be using to keep track of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so since most people are on their electronic device looking at things, probably looking at Facebook or something, they can message me, and no one's the wiser when it happens. Like nobody ever notices because everybody's always looking down and trying to keep track of stuff. So it works really well, and so that's one way that it could go. That could work out. Or if the paladin does end up saving the princess, well, that doesn't put the rogue in any compromising position, I suppose. Except maybe at this point, I could go, now this guy is mad that he wanted you to go and do this, and he was going to give you money, and he was expecting you to keep that princess under her help.
Right, his offer was great. Right.
And now there's people coming after you, and now we've unboxed this whole other can of worms. And maybe as they fight back against that guy who was trying to keep the princess locked up, they slowly learn that the rogue was actually trying to impede them along the way or something.
Nice.
I don't know. That's just off the top of my head. But this is, that's the good thing about doing it in a list, is that you can sit down and you can really think about those things. You get a lot of time to digest and to look back. One of the best things you can do is reference back to something that you've already established in the past, pull it into the front of it. That makes it look like it was planned the whole time, and like you're a wizard. And you just like people are like, what? Like
I love my GM. He's a genius. Like maybe he's just got a good memory. Right.
I've had them ask me a couple times, how did you know we were going to do this? Like, well, I had it planned that way the whole time. I just guessed it from the beginning that this is the way it would go.
Right. Because I made you do what you did. You just didn't know it. Right.
Yeah.
Dance, monkeys, dance. Right. So we're about out of time on the 15 minutes. I would absolutely I could talk to you all day. If you could summarize your viewpoint on player agency in a sentence or two.
Player agency, establish a consistent world with consistent, in-depth background, utilize those elements when the players make decisions and put them on the list. You'll have a really amazing, very different D&D game that I think everybody will enjoy.
And there you have it. Player agency. Is it all on them? Is it all on you? Is it kind of in the middle? Do you pre-construct adventures around them? Do you sandbox it up and let them tell you what's important? You be the judge. You decide. It's your game. Later days.